everybody. Welcome back to Xenia Bridge. Second week in a row that we did not have the guest that we advertised on. Funnily enough, though, this was our guest for last week. Amanda had
some shit around.
She had some personal stuff that came up, nothing I'm going to talk about on air, but we ended up having to reschedule her, and she was originally going to come back on in November, but then there was personal stuff for our guest this week, Evans Murphy, and I reached out to Momma, and she was kind enough to come on to talk about the original stuff we were going to talk about last week, which is
fucked. The world is fucked.
That's basically been the last 3 weeks of our shows.
We're going to talk about the world is fucked, but we're also the world is fucked for all of us. So.
Thank you so much, Carbuckle.
Where's that term where one saying applies to two things? That's a thing. I can't think of the name of that now.
I double entendre?
Maybe.
Jen, your volume. Right. Jen, your volume's a little on the low side.
Yeah.
Is that wrong way? Is that better?
Significantly.
Yeah, that's much better.
Okay, cool. I don't know what the fuck is going on. StreamYard's fucking updated, and then it's 8,000 fucking times higher than everything else.
I think do that a lot. It's
Fuck.
They're nice,
quick thank you to Carbuckle for the $5 super chat, keeping up the tradition. Carbuckle has given a $5 super chat at the beginning of almost every single one of our live streams.
I am currently YouTube's in the process of reviewing my content right now, so I guess I'll find out tomorrow.
Fingers crossed.
If I monetize, but no promises.
It took them about 4 days to review mine, and I was shocked how many of our live streams made it through. The record-breaking F-bomb stream still is somehow monetized, and yet our last 2 weeks were not. I don't understand their standards at all.
But a dartboard, I'm assuming?
Yeah, but I'm literally...
A dartboard with monkeys throwing the darts, I think.
I'm literally I have a wet-ass pussy, so and that's not the one that got flagged behind 18.
Okay,
the one that got flagged was, War on Women, surprisingly.
That wasn't surprising at all.
But
Old Man Dan, that is the Greek Phalanx. They're a tiny group in my Discord that I love to death that invades our streams and other allied streams that we post in the Discord with flame emojis. It's kind of just like a joke rating group that goes in and supports allied streams when people advertise them in Chill Place.
And it's a double-ended sword because I am Mother Dragon and I have a tendency to burn things to the fucking ground. So it's the fire.
It's encouragement for Jen.
Yes, it's pleasing Mother Dragon and making.
I love your shirt, by the way.
Thank you.
It's gorgeous.
So funny story behind this. I went through a really bad breakup, and everyone's like, "Let's go to the drag bar." So I bought this, and I got completely shit-faced drunk, and I had a great time. Then I put on a bunch of weight, couldn't wear it for a while, and then I lost the weight but kept the boobs, which makes the shirt look better. So I was like, "Oh, let's try this shit."
I have a show on my channel. I do a show where we just bring friends on and talk about a television show, and I did an episode of The Sopranos, and I had this shirt that I found, never worn it before. I don't even know how I had it, but it's kind of like that, where it has the little crisscross. It has the open sleeves up, or the open shoulders. It was totally
I have an open shoulder top. I have to try it.
If you've ever seen The Sopranos, it was absolutely like an Adriana shirt. So
oh my God.
It was perfect.
Well, I figured since my boobs have been such a hot topic lately, X marks the spot.
Exactly.
So, since you're on the topic of your channel, do you want to give our audience, for those who have not heard of Momma Atheist, which shame on you if you haven't, link is in the description to her channel. Go check her out.
What is wrong with you?
Criminally undersubbed. Definitely need to go check her out. Momma, do you want to give yourself a quick introduction? Kind of tell us a little bit about your educational background, why you want to talk about climate change, what you do on your channel.
Okay. I did actually just go a little bit over 1,000 because I did a dark matter cartoon last month, so that pushed me over the top.
Which she's fucking amazing in, by the way.
Thank you. It was a lot of fun. He's a really great guy. But I am Momma Atheist, but just call me Manda. I'm a climate scientist. I also have a degree in astrophysics, and on my channel I talk about some atheism stuff, but I also am a science communicator. I mostly talk about climate change because that's what I do. So, and I work in ecosystem preservation and projection. So I run simulations on endangered and mostly near endangered species and how the climate, the changing climate is affecting their ecosystems and how the populations will be affected because of the changing climate and what will happen to the surrounding species, because as you know, every species in the ecosystem is connected, so they all work together, and once one falls, they can all topple. So that's what I do.
Yeah, and like Carbuncle says, so it sounds like you're right in the trenches kind of dealing with these topics day in and day out. So in other words, you're the perfect person to have on to talk about this.
When I tell y'all, this woman is
you.
one badass motherfucker right here. Like she's one of my inspirations. And a lot of the time I'm like, I don't understand this, help. I'm like, I don't do the STEM stuff. Can you help me, please?
Anytime.
She is insanely intelligent, amazingly fucking badass. Like, if you're not fucking sub to her, go sub to her shit.
I'm proud to say that
motherfuckers need to learn some shit. Go.
I'm proud to say that Mama was one of my first friends in the community, actually.
You were one of my first as well. And I met Jen soon right after that.
Yep.
So, and Jen, I was like, so
and then I'm just like, girl, I'm fucked up. Don't put me on no pedestal. I am just fucked up and I'm a goddamn mess. And now she's like,
no pedestal. You're just a super badass as well. So, but we met on a show at a ridiculously early hour in the morning. Mm-hmm. We did 6-pack together, and I think it was at 6:30 that time. So
yeah, it was 6:30 your time, 5:30 mine. And
I would never be able to make it onto an episode of 6-pack if it is that freaking early in the morning. Like I'm up until 2 a.m. PST, but I sure as hell cannot get up that freaking early.
Like, me and Amanda were like, yeah, morning. Where's the coffee? Yeah, okay.
Because we're like the only American. Well, no, Jay is an American technically, but he works the night shift. Hold on, 2 seconds. I just my son walked in. 2 seconds. I'm still here. Okay. Oh, that is my son actually.
There he is.
With Lucille. He says he waves hi at everybody. He just didn't want to interrupt because he knew this was an important stream. So
$3 Kanukian super chat. You guys are great. Enough said. Thank you so much, Womcat. So Mama actually provided us a link that she wanted to go over. Do you guys want to screen share it to kind of show what we're looking at, or do you want to just go over it? I'm going to post the link in the chat for those of you who don't want to follow along on screen and want to look at it yourself. This is a New York Times article. It's the headline is "The Trump administration is reversing nearly 100 environmental rules." Here is the full list. So give me a second, and
I'm not gonna lie, I didn't have time to go through every one of them.
No, and I haven't, I've read through them. When I actually did one of the first shows that I did, going on someone else's show, I think it was after yours, Allie, but the next was Aaron Roz. He invited me on to talk about this specific thing, and this was back in April. So I had tried to go through all of them. There's so many, and there's still more. So, and as you can see, I think the really cool thing about it is how they put it at the top right there. It's 99 total. I thought it was 101. I was wrong. So I'm correcting myself if I said something the other day on a stream about it. But no, 72 completed, which is a lot. And this is in not even 4 years. So
this is just, I want to say 3.5, because he didn't start in this immediately.
The very first thing, hold on, I have
another 26 rollbacks are still in progress.
Yes. The first thing that Trump did in terms of environmental policies when he came into office was cutting science and specifically environmental initiative programs. That was the first thing he did. The second thing he did was to start the process to pull us out of Paris.
The Paris
which
Accord. Yeah.
I mean, was wrong. Yes, but Paris has a lot of issues. If you go on my channel, I do have a video specifically about the 3 climate change protocols that they've done. Montreal was the first one, Kyoto was the second one, and then Paris that was the latest one. And so I talk about I think that's probably one of my best videos. And all my climate science videos are short; they're less than 20 minutes long. But this one,
I get so much information because I'm not a STEM person. I'm more like the liberal arts person. But I'm like, there's some shit going on. I go over to her channel and I'm like, 20 minutes. She simplifies it. Okay, now I know what the fuck I'm talking about to go know what I need to go research.
Thank you.
According to this, the bulk of the rollbacks identified by the Times have been carried out by the EPA, which has weakened Obama-era limits on planet warming carbon dioxide emissions from power plants and from cars and trucks, removed protections from more than half the nation's wetlands, and withdrawn the legal justification for restricting mercury emissions from power plants. So, do you want to talk about any of that first? Do you want me to kind of scroll down a little bit and look directly at the stuff? What do you want to do?
Well, one of the things that I think people will really relate to, and one of the latest things that he's done was, I think it was back in March or early April, he rolled back emission standards, specifically in the West for cars, claiming that it was a way to give people a break during COVID so that they could buy cheaper vehicles. In order, because the vehicles with bad emission standards and worse gas mileages are the ones that are cheaper.
This was a big time. He announced this, and then a few weeks after, pretty much declared war on California, because California on the West Coast is the most notorious for emission standards. I
actually pulled up the article that was linked to in the one that you linked to me. U.S. to announce rollback of auto pollution rules, a key effort to fight climate change. This was published back in March, which is when the COVID stuff first started. It was updated the next day. It says that he raced to complete an auto rule by the spring, even as the White House was consumed with responding to the COVID crisis. President Trump is expected to extol the rule, which will stand as one of the most consequential regulatory rollbacks of his administration as a needed salve for the economy crippled by the pandemic.
Yeah, and this, it's like at that point in the pandemic, it was very new. March was at the sheer beginning of the pandemic, so nobody knew how long this was going to last. Yearly emissions tend to come around for some reason, like around the summertime.
Kana says that your mic is low again.
Jeez, oh my fuck! Like, is that better?
At least it's not me this time.
Much better.
Is that much better? So. There's something on my fucking computer that's I think controlling shit, and it's pissing me off, and I gotta figure it out.
Is it okay? Go to your bottom right hand corner, press this little button here, and see if Skype is signed in.
No, I don't have Skype.
This was happening. I had Hemant Mehta on my show last night, the Friendly Atheist, and for some reason he wasn't touching anything at all, but his mic kept cutting out. Like if you would get a little bit louder, even if you don't have Skype, Microsoft auto installs it on your computer, and it auto controls your mic settings from the background.
Oh yeah, there's Skype is running. Yeah. But,
yep, you have to log into it even if you don't have an account and turn off the regulation from the settings.
I just cut Discord too, which likes to bounce my audio shit around, so I just quit out of that. So, but it's on my phone in case Sally, because you gotta get in touch with me. Right, Lizzie? Ocean and Stars keep having the same issue. I'm gonna have to fucking hit them up.
Yeah, I'm going to give Ocean credit for the fact that he was the one who, on that stream with Cirrus, alerted me to that problem. I found out that my mic was doing the same thing when I was doing recordings, and that's what's been keeping it so low when I've been recording stuff on Audition. My videos have been louder as of late because I figured out that Skype was fucking with my mic.
So, emission season
for the record, Math Pig, we're on StreamYard right now, and it still does that. Skype just does that to your mic no matter what program you're using.
Yeah. So... Emission seasons tend to be the summer, and nobody knew at that point in time what summer was going to look like. This was extremely rushed, and it's like when you are faced with losing your job, you're not thinking about buying another car.
No, that's such a rich this is such a rich person justification for something like, oh, well, they can't buy their third car right now.
Like you're not gonna go if you have a vehicle. You're not going to turn around and say, this is my financial security is at risk. This is the perfect time to go trade my vehicle in. And you're sitting here. We were all locked down at this point. We were, hey.
Well, actually, you mentioned the going to war with California. I scrolled down to the thing, and there's your declared war on California right afterward.
Now, we were all also under quarantine at that point. We were locked in March. So who the fuck is thinking you know what? I'm not doing anything new. Let's go fucking get a vehicle. Who's thinking this?
The logic of it makes no sense in the long run. This is something that I talked extensively about with a colleague of mine, is that you end up paying more anyway for gas, because the problem part of it is that these are gas guzzling vehicles. You pay for more for repairs because the way
Right,
that these
and
emissions. So
part of the emission standards in California is they make sure that your exhaust is not cut short, so you're not guzzling in more gas. They're making sure that everything mechanically is in place, everything computerized is in place, so that things aren't going to break. So to lower the emission standards and start driving around the fucking clunkers that we see in the fucking South, because we have like no emission standards out here. You're like,
yeah,
I know here we don't have them here.
I know we did it. I know we did in Connecticut. I lived in Connecticut. I lived in Arizona.
Right.
Don't
Emissions
They're
is a very up north thing.
Washington is an army of Teslas and Priuses just everywhere.
Yeah, emission standards is a very up north thing because these fucking jacked up goddamn pickup trucks wouldn't fucking pass them for shit. Like, no, they just wouldn't. So we don't have
So
them.
there were two reasons why Trump did this. One was, as Jen mentioned, this was a fuck you to California. I knew it was California.
California and New York. Because California and New York have some of the highest emission standards in the country. New York is rigid. I've had to run emissions tests for vehicles in New York. They're extremely rigid. This was a time where New York was being fucking ravaged by COVID. California was starting to creep down from Washington. So this was like a blow to two states that he couldn't stand, that have spoken out against him, that were in the process of fighting against him when it came down to funding, when it came down to PPE, and when it came down to him handling the early days of the COVID-19 crisis.
I think what was most terrifying was we still hadn't even found patient zero. And the fact that this was a time was like 6 months ago is kind of terrifying in and of its own right. Am I wrong? Like 7 months ago?
I feel like I've lived through 4 Cloverfield movies in less than a year. Like,
God. But and then the second reason that he did it was obviously because, and I think this is obvious to everybody, that the Republicans are very much in the pocket of the fossil fuel industry. Big oil is the largest lobby group or lobbyist group in DC. They have the most power, second only to guns. So the reason that, and I have said this, Trump is not a smart man. Everybody knows that. He's just not. But I never really truly believed that he didn't believe in climate change, especially because of how he's treated his properties. He has made, corrections to his properties to stave off the ravages of climate change, specifically, I think, in his golf courses in Scotland because of the rising tide or the rising sea level.
He's been known to use substandard insulation as well in his buildings.
But that's just because he's a cheap, stupid motherfucker. But it's the baby dragon's birthday today, and they are taking full advantage of it by wrecking everything they can find right now. So you guys are going to
sorry. So here's a really interesting bit. So number 6 on this says, revised and partially repealed an Obama-era rule limiting methane emissions on public lands, including intentional venting and flaring from drilling operations. A federal court struck down the revision in July 2020, calling the Trump administration's reasoning wholly inadequate and mandating enforcement of the original rule. However, the Obama-era rule was later partially struck down in a separate court case during which the Trump administration declined to defend it.
No, it's
Rudy was too busy banging his cousin to show up for that court date, apparently.
But anyway, so like I was saying, I really don't think that Trump doesn't believe in climate change. I think he just sucks off big oil, and he makes a lot of money from them. I know he has a lot of problems with science and understanding science, but I never believed that he was you can usually tell when he's lying. He's super adamant about something. And the way when he talks about hoaxes, he's too much into, it's a hoax. It's a Chinese hoax, whatever the fuck he came up with that week.
I think it's too big for him to wrap his brain around. Like, he's just not interested in it. So I don't think he has an active actual position on it. I think he just doesn't care.
He doesn't. He's not going to live to see the consequence of it. He doesn't give a fuck about his kids or his grandkids being affected by it. And the problem being is, and this is something that we talked about before the show, and why I'm glad I was able to come on now instead of after the election, is this is probably the most important issue. I mean, yes, we have I don't want to say the word. Sorry, we have the pandemic happening.
According to Google, just saying COVID now, they're not automatically going to demonetize you unless you're spreading misinformation.
You know what? You know what it's actually been called on the YouTubes? The Backstreet
What?
Boys reunion concert.
Ha!
I never listened to
Math
Backstreet
Pig
Boys.
said that, oh my God, like, I need to expose you to all of this. Oh my God.
Okay.
Math Pig said here in Northern Ireland, our cars get tested every year for admissions. That's how it's supposed to be here. We're supposed to get tested. You get tested once a year, and it's dependent on when you registered your vehicle. When your yearly registration comes up, you have to, in certain states. This doesn't apply to
in Connecticut.
In Washington,
it was the same.
Yeah.
In Washington, you only have to do it once your car is over, I believe, 5 years old. Newer cars don't. Newer cars because in order to sell your cars in our state, they have to meet certain emission standards. Newer cars do not qualify for that until they are at least 5 years old. So, like my car is a 2016.
I want to say it was the same in New York, and then at that point, it was every year, and you couldn't renew your tags unless you passed admissions.
Yep, it's the same up here. You can't even go in for renewing your tags until you pass your emissions test.
Connecticut and Arizona as well. So the problem right now is that people, especially because of the last 4 years that we've had with under Trump's misinformation and just flat out lies about climate change, the fact that honestly, people just don't really give a fuck. I mean, it's this big existential crisis that we're all facing. It's the end of the fucking world. Who can really, and I know it's the world really isn't going to end, but as far as species as we know it, including our own, are very much likely looking at
but it's not hyperbolic. It's not hyperbolic. We are literally at the point where if we continue like this, we're going to hit a tipping point that we cannot stop. And therefore, yes, the world is ending. Now, it may not end Earth as itself, but it will end. The
planet will stand.
Yeah, it will end for us.
Projection, and one of my biggest issues with my field has been projections. It's and I know projections, not in terms of what I do. What I do is use data to see how population sizes will change, dependent on how they've done so in the past. I'm talking about people that say, if we don't do X by this time, then, and one of our biggest problems was with Gore when he made that movie back in, I think it was 2001. And he said all of this stuff. He was very, he was kind of fear mongering about it. And it was like, look, if we don't change this by this time, we're going to be underwater by 2015. That didn't happen. Therefore, nobody takes climate change seriously anymore. The problem is, it's almost worse than what Gore predicted. No, the shit that he predicted didn't happen. He didn't have the right science behind him. And quite frankly, the science in 2001 is a lot different than what it is now. We've only been, climate science has only really been a thing for 40-ish years. But the change that's been in the past 20 years has been substantial. As we're looking at it now,
part of it has been a lot of interdisciplinary work, hasn't it? Like, that's one of the things that makes it so broad and massive and overwhelming, is the fact that you're dealing with so many different disciplines, looking at so many disparate data points and how they all fold in with each other.
We're getting my master's in climate science. I had a degree in physics, but chemistry, biology, geology, it's most of the main scientific disciplines. Not only that, but you work with people who work in different fields. Up until I think it was 2004, there was no scientific consensus as to what caused climate change. We had an idea. We kind of went like, we did it, like, it's probably obvious, but there was no way to prove it. There were no big papers about it. It was, I think in 2004, one of the first scientists came out and took a bunch of different papers and went through everything that they had, all the data that they had gathered since the earlier to mid 70s, and anything that had anything even tangential to do with climate science, and put all the data together and found that less than, I think, a third of it or something like that. I did a video on my channel about this as well, talking about how humans cause climate change, but less than a third really even brought the topic up. But of that third, that's where we get the 97% of scientists agree. It is 97% of scientists that work anywhere near the field of climate science agree that humans are the cause. And so that is not a small number. That is a large
and
number.
I remember back in the 80s, we were questioning it with the holes that we were seeing in the ozone and noticing that it was causing greenhouse effects.
But we fixed the holes for the most part.
Right. That was the first time I remember hearing about global warming.
That was the Montreal Protocol, the Montreal Protocol.
Right, that was the Montreal Protocol.
Literally the only one out of the three that's actually worked because it had a very specific agenda. The Montreal Protocol was about phasing out and then flat out. It was about, which meant banning CFCs, which are, CFCs. So the stuff in the, spray bottles and things like that were, I think it was DuPont that had invented them.
Evil, y'all.
Yeah, super evil. And
they're like Nestle levels of evil. Like Nestle shit. Yeah.
And it was
DuPont the one that also hid the effects of Teflon from the public?
Yes, because they were the ones that invented it.
They also created I think it's DuPont Lake. It was in Africa, where they were dumping a ton of shit into a lake, and the lake exploded with carbon dioxide and killed a fucking village. Killed an entire village of people instantly.
Yeah. But they're the ones
DuPont's
that
fucking evil.
I want to say the 30s was when they had invented the CFCs, and then because they were using them for aerosol sprays and for retardant agents and for foaming agents as well, but then they started to notice that the increase in these products were being made. We were having issues with holes in the ozone. But once the Montreal Protocol went into effect, and this was something that went through years, there was a process. It wasn't like, okay, we all got together and decided today we're shutting this down. It's just like with the Paris Agreement.
No, it took years.
Something that Trump complains about a lot is the fact that India and China don't have to keep up to our emission standards at the moment. But that's because they're not first world countries right now. So they have an amount of time. In fact, they have they can spare extra carbon emissions at the moment, and we, as other members of those that have signed, make up for that, and we work as a planet to fix this thing.
Right.
But by taking us out, the 25% of the world's carbon emissions are produced by this fucking country.
And I think it's important to note that part of the Paris Agreement was these carbon emissions kind of trades. We don't use as many, therefore we can give more of our carbon credit to a country like India, who doesn't have the infrastructure, who doesn't have the technology or the business structure that we have, to give them an easier path into transitioning to something more environmentally sound. Pulling us out of the Paris Accord pulls our credits out too. So these countries have absolutely no incentive, and they're like, well, we're not going to fucking meet it anyway, so why the fuck should we care?
No. And like I said, there are problems with it, but it is a start. We need to be working together.
Yes, I'm not going to sit here and say it's the fucking grandest thing on the planet. It's very vague. It's very vague. There's not a lot of, like the Montreal Accord was, where there was actual plans in place with the Montreal Accord. The Paris Accord is very vague. And it's like, well, maybe we could do this, and maybe we won't hit the tipping point, but we can try. And I'm like,
and that was one of the failures with Kyoto as well.
Yes,
Kyoto overreached, and in doing so, there was no specificity to it.
Yes,
which ended up making it a failure. And they doubled down on that and went further with Paris instead of backing it up and saying, okay, we need to do this, in much smaller steps, but be very specific about what is happening.
It's been given to Trump that when China's industrial districts shut down during the COVID crisis, they started to see clearer air. People were actually breathing better. And I believe Herkel's just noted that China's now embarking on a major Green Deal program, largely in part to the climate and the air quality change that they saw during the COVID crisis. So this is now another push to say, hey, we can do this. Trump will still not hear this.
So as we've been discussing, I've been scrolling through for folks that are watching over the various agreements. We're down to kind of 29 now. I want to point out number 30 here. Considering how many people were following the no DAPL stuff, number 30, one of the first things he also did was immediately approve the construction of DAPL, which Obama had actually put a freeze on, and they were doing an investigation. Less than a mile from the Standing Rock Sioux Reservation, Obama's administration had halted the project with the Army Corps of Engineers saying it would explore alternate routes. The pipeline is embroiled in a lengthy legal battle, but has been allowed to continue operating by the Army Corps of Engineers, even though a federal court reversed the Corps' decision to allow the pipeline to run along its current path.
And it's taken less than a year before we had a major leak.
Yep. Yeah. That leak went straight into forest land, too.
Mm-hmm. It was less than a year before we had a leak because of the fact that there was a thing a couple of years ago called sequestration, ladies and gentlemen, where the government shut down, and it shut down our budget. And the largest hit during sequestration was troop initiative. Troops were being pulled from retirement early. They had a cap on who can enlist. They were not providing high enough enlistment bonuses to retain these guys. So you throw up a project like the wall. You throw up a project like the Dakota Access Pipeline. New Orleans is still being fixed. New Orleans is still being fortified, especially being completely pounded year after year by hurricanes. We don't have the soldiers in the Army Corps of Engineers to properly supervise this pipeline. We don't have them.
Yeah.
So this is pretty much running way understaffed, probably by a bunch of fucking E3 privates that don't want to fucking be there in the first place. They just figure, hey, I'm going to get extra pay, might as well go sit and watch this pipe.
Yeah. No, like Jen said, there's actually two pipes. Dakota got a lot of, press coverage, but I can't remember the name of the second one.
And it's not far from it either. It's like it's the one that goes from Calgary down the Dakotas down way the fuck down to like the Gulf, I want to say.
So in terms of these 99 regulations and laws that he's turned or in the process of overturning, when do you think the date of the last one that happened was?
2 weeks ago.
9/29. So yeah, about. Yep.
I know politics.
Jen did her research.
No, I know politics. I know fucking politics. I know calendars.
And this was something that, it was something about the Alaska Roadway Preserve.
And that's actually 43 right there.
There's a law that there's a law that hold on a sec.
Can I chime in on that? Maddie, they Army Corps engineers, they do have active duty engineers enlisted, and they will send them down for a structural what's the word, structural duty. There was actually quite a few of them from the 101st that were sent down who rebuilt New Orleans.
I'm sorry, Mama, by the way, like any guest, whenever I bring up comments.
Yeah, I'm just like, woo!
No.
I didn't cheat. I know politics and I know calendars, and I'm at the point where Trump is extremely predictable in his behavior. Yeah. So I can tell patterns of behavior when things are going to fall.
In 2001, there was a law passed, the National Forest Road, I don't know, something to do with the fact that you cannot go off road in national forests or do any constructions off road or off designated sites in national forests, which makes sense. They're fucking protected land.
Yeah. Since Teddy Roosevelt.
Yeah.
Since the 30s, y'all.
And this specific law was passed in 2001, and then for this one that he's been trying to overturn, it's been a year. I think it was September of last year that he started his attempt to do that, and this was passed. And it's specifically though in Alaska, he didn't get it. He wanted it passed for the whole country, but it's just Alaska. But they can pretty much do whatever they want.
Alaska's the fucking Wild West now, right now. When it comes to drilling, when it comes to hunting, it's the fucking Wild West right now.
It's also got so much that we need to preserve, and
earlier in the article,
Alaska, for the most part, really is our last wild frontier. Really is Alaska, because this is one of the very few areas that we've protected greatly, not only because of the environmental factor, but because of the fact that it's so close to a country that we don't trust. So we're very weary about doing really cool shit in Alaska because we're afraid they're going to come steal our fucking secrets. So Alaska normally has been protected. However, when you're sucking Putin's dick, you'll pretty much sign over fucking anything to him.
Not that Putin didn't try to put the American oil and gas industry completely under with that oil war that nobody heard about during COVID.
He pays for the hookers that pee on Trump, therefore he doesn't care.
But it's interesting how often Alaska has come up. Like earlier in the report, it said that the largest currently remaining wild stretch of land in America is in Alaska, and he opened it up for drilling.
Yes. And this is the Alaska Pipeline Project, I think it's called.
He just opened up the preserve, was what it said, for drilling.
Right, but this is for the Alaska Pipeline Project. This is something that they have been attempting to push for many years, is to create a pipeline that runs from Alaska, from these preserve areas, all the way down through Texas to deliver oil.
Mm-hmm. So, this seems kind of important to the conversation. Weaken the National Environmental Policy Act, one of the country's most significant environmental laws, in order to expedite the approval of public infrastructure projects such as roads, pipelines, and telecommunications networks. The new rules shorten the time frame for completing environmental studies, limit the types of projects subject to review, and no longer require federal agencies to account for a project's cumulative effects on the environment, such as climate change.
Mm-hmm. So what this one pretty much says is, this is another thing that has to do with a lot of protected land, but pretty much anywhere that you have, water reserves. We get our fresh water. A lot of us get our fresh water from the ground. Anything that you're building somewhere, anywhere, whether it be a city or the country or anything like that, you always have to go through environmental protections, and there are tests and things. You have to make sure there's nothing endangered that you might be encroaching on. This is actually connected to the wall, to be honest with you. Part of it is, at least. But you have to make sure that you're not going to put any species in danger. You're not going to make any water reserves toxic. There are a lot of reasons why these laws are in effect. One of the things that they pushed back a lot on in terms of the wall was that a good deal of the land that Trump wants to build this wall on are places that have endangered species or protected species. We're in the middle of our sixth mass extinction event as a planet. Okay, and this is something that happened.
Some biologists designated this the Anthropocene because of the Anthropocene extinction.
It depends on who you talk to. Some people even say we're not quite there yet, but we are. We've been in the middle of it for a while. And yes, as a planet, not only do we go through changes in climate, we since this is our sixth mass extinction event, we clearly go through these. These are things that happen naturally, but the rate at which this is happening and the time that it's happening, it is nuts.
I believe it's called the Holocene event, isn't it? Is the proper name for it? Is it the Holocene event?
I'm not totally sure.
I've only ever heard it referred to as the Anthropocene extinction because
Could be the Anthropocene. Can I just touch on something that Maddie said here with the core that I want to just clarify. All military civilian. The Army National Guard has both active duty and National Guard. The Army Engineer Corps is both National Guard, it's reserve, and active duty. So you may have had one of the National Guard or reserve branches that you had to deal with. So it's not, there's still military, but it's just a matter of part-time, full-time.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
But so the issue with where the wall is, you have places where there might be protected or endangered species. We are losing, what we know of right now is around 30,000 species a year. We lose species every year. Species die out. It happens. It sucks, but it happens. But the low side of what we're looking at is 30,000. We have possibly millions of species on this planet, both flora and fauna, that we haven't even discovered yet. There could be plenty that we don't even know.
Especially in the depths of the oceans.
Yes.
Right.
And let's not forget that the oceans are the most important part of our planet. The oceans are our
and largely
lungs.
undiscovered. I mean, there's probably an actual 737 sitting in the South Indian Ocean, and they still have yet to find it.
Yeah.
That's how, that's how vast and undiscovered our oceans actually are.
Isn't it something like 60 to 70% of our oceans are completely unmapped because we just can't, like, the pressure is
40
so
to
bad.
50. I think it's around 40 to 50 at this point.
That is what Google is for. Give me a moment. Yes. I don't want you guys to have to hear me tapping. I will let you guys talk for a minute.
And yeah, Maddie actually said it's the Holocene. The Holocene epoch is the one that we're
okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, I can remember those.
I remember it because there's a song that I really love called Holocene, and it just kind of.
Oh my god! And I was doing a thing with Brian on it. No, I was doing a thing with Brian on it. I was supposed to. That's why, though, it's my fault because I was supposed to do it a couple weeks ago, but because of my surgery and stuff, I had to put that aside for a second.
No, I get it, but I mean, just to give the audience the sheer amount of oceans that we have, there is currently a Boeing 737 or 747 that is somewhere in the South Indian Ocean. We have not been able to find it since 2014.
Okay, according to the National Ocean Service, more than 80% of our oceans are unmapped.
Right, and like I said, if you guys remember MH370, Malaysia Flight 370, that disappeared. There is a literal 737 somewhere in the ocean that we haven't found in 6 years. This just gives you the sheer vastness of the oceans on our
Because I always cite my sources, for anybody watching on the playback, the live chat should be available. I just posted the link to the National Ocean Service that I just cited.
Right.
So
Hannibal of Carthage says there are multiple freighters just in the Great Lakes.
Yeah.
That have been unlocated, and those are tiny compared to the oceans.
I mean, the Great Lakes are also kind of terrifying with their currents and stuff. You will die looking for stuff down there.
Mm-hmm. I'm just still blown away the fact, y'all, we lost a fucking Boeing 737 in an ocean. We lost a Boeing fucking passenger plane in an ocean.
Didn't the black box on that get disabled before it went down?
No, they just were never able to find. You can't disable the black boxes. You can disable the transponders that track you. You can disable some of the transponders that track you. He disabled the transponders. He was unable to. Whoever was unable to disable the SATCOM phone. And what they did was they found 7 arcs that brings you all the way up from Kazakhstan to the Southern Indian Ocean. And it's most likely somewhere in the Southern Indian Ocean, which has been deemed the absolute wildest, most underdeveloped and underdiscovered place on the planet. Is the Southern Indian Ocean. We lost a fucking plane, y'all. Y'all can't fucking tell me we know everything on this goddamn planet. We lost a plane. There's probably shit living in the carcass of that plane that we don't even know fucking exists right now. Like... And for those who asked, it was 3 baby dragon birthdays today. We have 3 today. Everyone keeps saying ocean, and I'm like, God damn it, what is he here for?
No, but the oceans are, we get more than 50% of our oxygen out of the oceans. It actually, I think it's more than 50% of our CO2 is absorbed by the oceans. I think it's more than 60% of our oxygen is created by the oceans. Sorry, numbers are weird tonight for me. But
it's okay. They're weird for me every day.
The currents in our oceans, they dictate climate on the planet. They dictate weather patterns throughout the entire planet. So as we fuck with the oceans, we change everything, and plus talk about rising sea levels. And I mean, our oceans really need to be, we need an entire Paris Climate Accord just for
something
oceans, I feel like
something. And
it's important.
And KC Pikachu actually just brought up Titanic. It was actually found that at the rate that global warming is happening and we're having glaciers melt, it is actually more dangerous to sail in the North Atlantic now than it was when Titanic sunk, because we have so much more ice breakage that's now floating, that they will not, the shipping industry will not put passenger cruise ships up on that path anymore, because it's just simply become too dangerous due to global warming. We have so much ice breakage that it's entirely too dangerous to create the same path that we used to take.
Warming.
Oh, I'm sorry. Are we not supposed to say that anymore?
Sorry. Well, and something
climate change, I should say.
Yeah, I actually had a interesting conversation with another climate scientist I met on Twitter about this. It wasn't an argument per se, but they felt that there's a disagreement. A disagreement. It's pointless to change the wording, but the thing is that people hear the word global warming, and then, as I've said this before, you end up with dumb fuck senators who come to the floor of the Senate, the fucking,
and they're like, well, it happens naturally, and then the planet's just gonna get cold. And so, y'all, this is the shit that fucking drives me crazy, right? So you get these dumbass motherfucking senators that are like, but this is what the planet does naturally, and then it's gonna cool. Alright, okay, yes, the planet goes through heat cycles, it goes through cooling cycles. Yes, we get that. However, it seems that they only pick the science that they like, because the last time this planet warmed up, we had the Great Migration out, and the Great Migration of human history, to where our ancestors moved all over the planet. And then what happened? Then it froze, and it bottlenecked human existence. We are lucky we survived that bottleneck with the last cooling period. So they're sitting here saying, oh, no, it'll just work itself out. It'll cool off again. We're probably not going to survive that bottleneck again. We don't know how to live off the land enough. We don't know how to read our land well enough to know when to move, to know when to migrate back to warmer climates. And we're now far too populated. We cannot fit that much of the Earth's population into the climates that we would need for another mass freezing event. So they will die. Like, their little fix of it'll cool itself. No, we're going to die. That happens. Like, that...
So I wanted to transition a little bit, because we're about 45 minutes in.
Oh, hold on.
One tiny thing real quick, and then I do want to talk about this, because that shit pisses me off.
But there's a couple things I wanted to cover with this. I will let you go, though.
And yes, we actually should be heading toward glacial period right now, but we are actually heading toward what is known as superheating point, where we are heading toward temperatures that our planet has not seen in 3 million years. And and I know I said what I said about projections, but in terms of, if we continue at the rate we're going today, within a decade we will be past the 1.5 degrees Celsius temperature hike that will put us past the point of no return. So it's projections bad, but that's true. A decade. 9 years, actually.
9 years. Mm-hmm. Like, and this is something that we had all looked at when we were kids. Like, oh, this won't happen until I'm old. Yep. I won't even be 50.
Yeah.
I won't even be
much
50.
faster.
Yeah.
So this shit is Trump's.
So this is what passes for a climate proposal on his website. So I want to give you guys a little bit of history on this, because Jen and I, before the show, were looking around for information, because we wanted to talk about both candidates' climate proposals. Because, as you guys know, many of us have already gotten our absentee ballots. Mine just arrived a few days ago. I did my voting
earlier this month.
Yep, I'm going to be mailing mine in the next day or two. We just did our voting last night. We usually sit around the table and discuss stuff when we do our voting, and then we go off and do our, decide who we're going to vote in private. But we get voters pamphlets up here in Washington, so we can read statements for and against every single policy proposal that we're voting on. We get to read biographies and statements from every single local official that's running. And then, of course, you get the statements from the national officials that are running. I already know that I was voting for Biden, but for those of you who might be undecided, or for the trolls that wander about my channel and seem to enjoy, shit talking, Jen and I were looking around for any kind of policy proposals from Trump at all. This is the closest thing I could find. I went to his website because I looked up for Biden. I Googled Biden climate climate policy, and it was right there at the top of the page. Easy to find. You guys are gonna see that site in a few minutes. When I looked that up for Trump, nothing. Absolutely freaking nothing.
Nope.
Like,
He
I
has
found lots
no
and lots of
plan.
news articles, but no policy proposals. So I went to his website. His website, no policy proposals at all.
So here's what Trump's doing with that. Joe Biden has been very upfront about a lot of the proposals that he has laid. He has actually turned around and said that the crime bills that he sponsored, he now feels were a massive mistake. And had he known what he knows now, he would have never backed them. He is backtracking on policies that he's backed up. He is now laying out future policies to correct very much his own damage, his own undoing while he's been in office. Trump is using policy as bait. He will not reveal his energy and environment policy. He will not reveal his stimulus policy unless he wins. This is what he's doing.
No, he doesn't have one.
I don't know if he doesn't have one, but I think it's a manipulation tactic. And this is why. If he loses in November, then he can turn around and say, well, I'm not going to be president anyway, so why do I have to pass an environmental bill? Why do I have to pass a stimulus bill? Why do I have to pass a welfare policy if I'm leaving? Which then stalls this even more. It stalls it 2-3 more months because according to him, Biden's just going to come in and undo everything I do anyway, so why am I going to bother to pass it? This is his way of trying to secure himself back into office. What he's doing is saying, if you want it taken care of now, you have to vote me in so that I can reveal my policy and get it done for you. If you don't, I'm not revealing it. And you have to wait longer. This is an abuse tactic.
And it's an abuse tactic.
So what I did want to point out was this is under his site. If you guys go looking for it, if you want to find this on your own, I'm going to post the link in the live chat as I always do, because again, you want to be full disclosure on the sites you're using. This is on the section of his website that says promises kept. So this is him bragging about what he's already done and talking about the things that he wants to do all in one page. And he puts energy and the environment together.
It's Keystone XL. That was the other pipeline. Jen.
Yeah, I was gonna say this literally writes as what I've done for Keystone Incorporated. What
It's
I've
really
done for
gross
Patterson
though,
UTI.
because like they're bragging about stuff like, oh, we've given gas and oil companies a 78 million acre lease on the Gulf of Mexico. You're bragging about this. You're talking about having shut down what was it called? Hold on a sec. Obama's CPP, which is the Clean Power Plan, which was about having what it was the EPA was working with each state on their own to devise a plan in order to cut their own carbon emissions. And it was something that is really one of the best ways to go about it, because instead of blanketing everything, you look at what industries
each state needs individually and says, okay, we're going to focus on this for you.
Yeah, and plus in terms of size, population size, all of it, that's very important. So Obama figured out, I think it was 2015 this was passed. It was 2014 it was proposed, 2015 it was passed. Let's do this individually. One of the first things Trump did was not only get rid of it, had no policy in place to replace it, and fucking brags about this shit. Who is reading this and going, oh, look at all the oil that we're getting and look at all the carbon emissions we're pumping into the atmosphere. We're awesome. Like, who is thinking that? I don't understand.
There's a reason why. There's a reason why this happened. I know, I love this because you're coming at it from the climate end, I'm coming at it from the political end, and then we're like, oh shit, we found out who's under the Scooby found out who's under the mask kind of shit. So when Obama started enacting these policies, it took a big hit to the oil and natural gas industry because there were more regulations. And in fact, under Obama, we pumped out so much oil and natural gas that we had such a surplus that they laid off a shit ton of people. Because we didn't have the resources for it. We didn't have the need for it. So what Trump did by eliminating these environmental protections and eliminating a lot of the restrictions on the oil and natural gas industry, he opened up jobs. Now, these jobs for oil riggers, these jobs for floor hands, these jobs for deckhands require a high school diploma, and that's it. It's very much backbreaking grunt work, but it's extremely good paying work. So what he did was he targeted his voter base at Middle America, who was now losing their money in the West Virginia, Pennsylvania, North Dakota, Texas areas due to these shutdowns. He targeted these middle class people and saying, I can give you these high paying jobs back if I strip these protections and go and put you back into $100,000, $200,000 a year jobs. This is how he targeted them. He did this as a means for nothing but votes.
He also did that with the coal industry. He made such a big deal about
but that's why, because he
8,000 jobs total.
He talked all this shit. He talked all this shit for the coal industry, which the coal industry overlaps the natural gas drilling industry. It's the same region of the country. So when he couldn't come through on the coal industry, and now you have the literal poorest counties in America, where the median average income is $17,000 for a family of 4. The poorest areas of the country are saying, hey, you told us you'd give us back our jobs. You told us you'd clean up the drug problem here. You told us you would fund our schools. He gives back only 8,000 jobs, and now he can't give back anything else because coal is pretty much obsolete. So what does he do? He rolls back the protections to put back the natural gas and oil drilling into these areas. Now, this led to people who were bankrupt were able to sell their houses to oil companies for a shit ton of money, to natural gas companies for a shit ton of money to drill on and frack on their land. This put their men back to work in the same area. And when we were having a giant sequestration and a giant layoff of soldiers, these guys, these oil, Patterson, UTI, and a lot of other ones would come down to the military bases and recruit these guys, knowing that they didn't have much options outside of the military because the military now no longer offers job placement upon separation. So this is how he made up for all the shit that he couldn't come through on the fucking coal industry. This is exactly how he made up for it, was rolling back restrictions to reopen drilling and fracking of oil and natural gas. Under the guise of, I'm going to give you your jobs back. You're going to be able to sell the houses for good money and then get out of the area that you've wanted to do for so long. This is exactly how he concentrated that voter base.
And there's 2 issues on that front. First of all, he makes such a huge deal about the fact that because of what he's done with natural gas and expanding oil drilling, both in the Gulf and in Texas, fracking, all that, he calls America energy independent, which is actually not. But we are.
Okay, Mama, say it right. It's Engergy. Engergy. It's Engergy.
Engergy independent.
However, his fracked up head says it that day. But he makes such a big deal about us being independent, and we're not. But also, and speaking to what Jen said, as you mentioned, these people that work, on the rigs or that work in the coal mines and stuff, they're not highly educated. We can take these jobs and move them to green energy. They could be trained. It wouldn't be that hard. Yes, it'll cost a little bit of money, both for infrastructure and for training.
Right.
But it'll save us a shit ton of money in the long run. It'll save our environment, and it will make these people more money than the dirt shit they're making now.
But that's how he opened it up. My ex-husband used to work on natural gas rigs out in the West Virginia, Pennsylvania. I guess you would call that the Adirondacks area. I guess that's what it's called. Appalachia, yeah, not Adirondack. Thank you. Adirondacks up in New York, which actually they do drill up there as well. But he was in the Appalachia region. And when I tell y'all, these fucking people are poor.
And living in little cabins in the woods.
Shacks that have, like I said, the median household income in some of these towns is $17,000 for a family of 4. He could not bring the coal industry back. And Appalachia, for a very, very long time, was completely coal dependent. Once coal shut down, these towns shut down. And then when Obama had put Obama was very efficient on natural gas and oil drilling, to the point that we had a massive ass surplus. So we didn't have the need for us anymore. And then they packed up the rigs and the town shut down again, made these people poor again, because they couldn't operate within the restrictions, and we had a surplus. This is exactly how Trump targeted poor white America.
Yeah, and then he left them hanging. He said, "Oh, you guys aren't happy," just like he did with the farmers. He went, except he paid off some of the farmers.
Mhm.
What's funny about this energy thing is that's not the only one. They spelled fucking gases wrong. The word gases.
How do you get the word gas wrong? Like
You're an
his
idiot.
whole he grew up in New York City with Con Edison, energy and gas. It was literally on the fucking manhole covers every day outside of his house. Yeah, he fucked it up.
But yeah, him talking about, like I said, he sees how he wants us to have all this power and all this wealth as a nation, but he doesn't want to take responsibility for it. Again, the fact that third world countries and developing nations like India and China specifically, because they're bigger countries, they have big populations, and China, who he hates, were given
because they're richer than him.
Yeah, everybody's richer than
amazing.
him.
Well,
but they were given much more time to get to these carbon emission standards and given more credits than other countries, which makes sense on a global scale. It makes sense for the entire planet, but that is the problem. One of the biggest things with Trump's administration is it's been about America first, and this entire world will burn to the fucking ground if places like America keep having that kind of fucking mentality.
And I did a video on this. American individualism is what I titled it. Also in the fact of Trump does not like to expand his education, does not like to expand his references, his experiences. His family very much made their money on the steel, coal, rail, like many other families did back then. My family made their riches in that as well. However, those in my family who did continue onto that line moved into the finance sector because that went bankrupt. So I'm wondering if he sees his failures in real estate as I could be rich just like my grandfather was if we restart coal, if we restart steel, if we stop giving a shit about fossil fuels, because that's what they made their millions on. I'm really wondering if he's harking back to this, well, it could work for me if we can go back to the world the way that it was when my grandfather was here. And I would be as successful as he was.
That's probably
so. Can I want to point something out, by the way, on his website. Kept campaign promise to get America out of the Paris Climate Agreement. Fun fact, we're not actually out of the Paris Climate Agreement yet.
Yeah, we are.
Yeah, we are.
It was it's like
it
6
says
months
that
ago,
we're not. It said, like, on the website we were just looking at, we cannot fully pull out until November 4th.
Really? Because
that's what it said in that. That's what it said in the website I was just looking at, like the one that you sent me.
Because I know it took time, but I'm pretty sure we fully came out of it. Okay.
That's right. In accordance with Article 28 of the Paris Agreement, the earliest possible effective withdrawal date by the United States cannot be before November 4th, 2020, 4 years after the agreement came into effect in the United States, and coincidentally 1 day after the 2020 U.S. presidential election.
Well, then I apologize. I know that
I thought we pulled that about 6 to 8 months ago too. Yeah,
that's what I thought too. But I've been, like, as you guys have been talking, like,
might be getting my Brexit date on. It might be the Brexit date that I'm confusing. I don't know.
No, but I've been reading over that website.
Yeah, I apologize. I am sorry.
We all fuck up with this shit.
Okay, look, this is such a broad fucking topic. Like, did we not talk about the sheer number of fields that we're talking about, the sheer number of laws that we're talking about? Like, just the breadth of what we're trying to cover tonight is so staggering that the fact that we've managed to do so as effectively as we have is incredible. But what I want to point out to you guys is that we do not see, you notice what's missing here? It's any kind of plan for the future. This is just, look at all of the ways in which I have sucked Big Whale's dick. Like, look at that.
To y'all why. Because he's using this shit as a pawn to hold over the American people to elect him in. I have great plans. I have ways to save the country. But, and he said this about his stimulus plan, that he will announce it after the election. He's holding future plans over the American people as a pawn so that he can sit and throw a fucking temper tantrum when he doesn't win to say, well, anything I do, Biden's going to undo it anyway. So I'm not going to reveal anything. They're not going to stick to it. The American people are just going to have to wait. And then he's going to turn around and gaslight the country in saying that since your savior Biden is going to come take office, y'all could fucking sit here and suffer until he does. This is what Trump is doing. He's doing it with the stimulus package. He's doing it with the Medicare bill. He's doing it with the climate plans. He will not, and y'all can mark my fucking words on this. I will be doing a live stream of the last debate. He will not talk about future policy because he is holding it over the country's head. We will not know future policy unless we vote him back. This is the same as, well, if you get into the family business, I'll pay for your college.
Which brings us to, unlike Trump, you go to Biden's website and this comes up right away. Like, it's actually not hard at all to find this. You just click about, you click Joe's Vision,
Boom.
And then there it is.
And it's here.
And I would like to point out, though, Joe's not perfect with this.
No.
I love
not at all.
Obama, and Obama had a lot of faults. And environment was definitely one of them. He was nowhere near where he should have been. I'm pissed about the fracking thing when it comes to Biden, but the fact that Biden is willing to work with Sanders, who is trying to work with AOC regarding the Green New Deal,
So
I do appreciate that.
let's touch on this fracking thing here a bit. Yes, Biden has turned around and said that he will not outright ban fracking. However, Biden is playing to his centrist base right now, his centrist white America base. I've actually looked into this plan. While he's not going to outright ban it, he's going to regulate it to the point that people can't operate within it. So it's essentially banning. Granted, it's not an outright ban. It's going to take a couple of years in order to draw down these regulations. But what he is afraid of is crashing this part of the country like Obama did. He doesn't want to put the ban on fracking and then crash West Virginia, Pennsylvania, Virginia area, Eastern Tennessee area. He's looking to regulate it down to the point that it would be minimal, if anything at all.
We just had a $5 super chat come in from Theory Driven. Have some money, please. Thank you so much, Theory Driven. So this is something that I'd like to touch on, which the fracking thing we did talk about. We wanted to talk about the fact that he won't outright ban it actually did piss me off, but I didn't know that you were that he was going to be regulating it basically beyond the point of operability in terms of profit.
Mm-hmm. I've actually looked into this, and while I don't think it's going to ban it outright, I don't think it's going to stop fracking outright. I think what his plan is he's going to put a big strain in a lot of regulations on fracking and on that industry, but on the same time attempt to boost clean energy. So as it's a phase program. It's while
limiting it to the point of obsolescence, hopefully.
Right. And it's like, yeah, we could still do fracking. I mean, it's legal, and there's companies that operate within the bounds of the law. However, we're opening all these jobs in this sector that are paying more. So what he's doing is eventually a shift. He won't outright ban it. I think where Joe and Kamala fucked up, where Joe and Miss Harris fucked up, is they didn't stress that they were going to put regulations on this. And this is very easily found. If you go digging a little bit, if you just say Biden plan on fracking, you will find that he's looking to regulate the fracking industry. He didn't put the whole plan off. They were just like, oh no, he's not going to ban fracking. What he's doing is he's trying to regulate into clean so that we don't have this crash of, well, I'm going to ban everything, and now we have to rush to educate people and get them back into the job market.
And the infrastructure, which is really kind of our biggest hurdle in terms of shifting to alternative energies, is the fact that it's going to cost a lot of money, and there is a shit ton of infrastructure that needs to be, put into place.
I'm pretty sure he said that his that Biden's plan is like $2 trillion in investment for infrastructure specifically.
Yeah, it's something along those lines. It's nowhere near.
Can you highlight Herkel's comment, please?
It's nowhere near what.
I'm sure it's part of it. I'm sure that's why he covered. I'm sorry, sweetheart. I'm sorry.
No, I was just saying the amount of money he's proposed isn't nowhere near the Green New Deal, but at least it's a start.
It's a start. I do believe that may have been strategic to grab Pennsylvania. He's probably got to tell you the truth. Even outside of fracking. Texas, now I may be mistaken, Momma Atheist, you can probably correct me on this. Is there a lot of fracking that's done in Texas, or is this is more towards the middle of the country into the mountainous regions for natural gas, correct?
It's natural. It's mostly natural gas, and it's actually a lot more in the northern part of the country, some in the Midwest, and in Canada. But there's definitely fracking in Texas.
There's but not to the level that we're looking at Oklahoma, the Dakotas, the Appalachians, right? Sure. Do I think that he probably strategically planned that to kind of grab Texas, to grab West Virginia, to grab Omaha? I'm sorry, not Omaha. Goddamn cats, baby dragons. They're fighting over toys right now. So I'm sure he did turn around and look at Middle America and say, let's omit that part a little bit. But if you actually look into his plans for fracking, he actually wants to like hugely regulate it.
It feels a little disingenuous that all that was said, and it wasn't something. And admittedly, it wasn't brought up during the presidential debate. It was only brought up during the vice presidential debate, and all Ms. Harris said was, "Joe Biden will not be banning fracking."
And that's about as far as Biden was able to go through too with Trump. That's about as much as he.
Well, in Biden's town hall, he did actually talk about regulation, but he didn't talk about regulating it heavily. He did talk about how he was asked by one of the voters at the town hall, what is your opinion on fracking? Are you going to ban it? He goes, no, I'm not going to ban it, but it does need to be regulated. It needs to be safer, and it needs to be safer for our communities. So that's the closest that he came to talking about regulation, but not to the degree that you're talking about. One thing I do want to point out, though, about his plan that I really, really like is specifically talking about climate justice, because this is something that I don't think is covered in the media near as much as it needs to be. And I don't think it's even covered in discussions on climate change near as much as it needs to be. But like I've seen documentaries and things done by investigative journalists, not like, oh, this is something on freaking like Netflix or something, but like these are ABC News spots and stuff like that, where they've talked about, especially in Florida, where these traditional like communities of color are getting gentrified as the gentry is fleeing from the coast as their properties are getting swallowed up by the sea. And this is happening with we've got the Ogallala Aquifer is drying up, and we're going to be having problems in the Midwest fairly soon because of that, because of mismanagement of water resources. Like there's a lot because of climate shifting, there's a lot of people who are going to lose their homes. Like I already have seen people on the coast here in Washington that we have the Puget Sound just down the street from me, and due to rising tides and stuff, we're watching people's houses fall into the water. Like it's not near as bad here because it's an inland sea, but it is connected to the ocean, and we are seeing that effect.
According to Ben Shapiro, Aquaman could buy that house.
That's so fucking stupid.
Who's gonna buy the house, Ben? Aquaman. I just want to touch back to fracking a bit in case some members of our audience don't know what it is. Fracking is pretty much pumping high-powered water into the ground, and what it does is
Sorry, go ahead.
No. You probably know way more about this than I do, so please fucking take it over.
You just end up polluting a lot of the water supply. It releases a lot of
what it essentially does is you're pumping high pressure water into the ground in order to break apart these natural gas pockets. And with that natural gas pocket, they will farm the natural gas and then sell it out to TVA and fucking whoever else. The problem that we're having with this is they're leaking natural gas and the chemicals in natural gas, methane. I know methane's a big one, and I can't think of the other one.
Aren't there also trace minerals and stuff that can often get loose that will end up in
infecting the water supply
and stuff,
right? Infecting the groundwater supply. And what eventually winds up happening is they keep hitting these gas pockets and they keep rocking these minerals out, and then it infects the local water supply in extremely poor areas. Now, to the point that they have let methane through their water pipes to where you can turn on your water and light it on fire.
Yeah.
It's not even just the water supply, though. I've actually had friends in the Midwest that have had neighbors or people in their neighborhood whose houses fell into sinkholes.
I was just about to say that sinkholes.
It completely destabilizes the ground. Right. It destabilizes the ground in a way that the ground was not naturally meant to move. and the ground was not naturally meant to shift in order to release these natural gas pockets in order for them to drill for natural gas. So the big problem is that it's shaking the ground near a major fault line. Not the Wabash Valley. Oh my God, I live on it and I can't. The New Madrid fault line. It's not the places they're drilling and they're fracking in the middle of the country ain't fucking far from the New Madrid fault line. That shit has the propensity to trigger the Wabash Valley fault line and literally split the country in half.
It's horrible, but it's also kind of funny. The Five Guys thing. Yeah, no, it completely destabilizes the land around it. They don't take into consideration anybody, especially residential areas that are in the surrounding, are in the surrounding area. Plus, you don't, you have obviously, though, the biggest issue is the water table, because the problem with natural gas is that the way fossil fuels are created is, in the simplest terms possible, there needs to be a lot of pressure and heat for fossils, or dead, mostly. It depends on if it's algae. I think algae is natural gas, and for coal it's plant life that was in the bottom of swamps. But you need to have a lot of pressure and heat to turn these fossils into fossil fuels in an anaerobic environment, which needs no oxygen. So it needs to be deep in the ground, and the pressure is what causes the heat. But in order for that amount of pressure, it has to be really deep underground. So you have to get into these huge rock formations that have trapped these, like Jen said, pockets of, fracking is mostly for natural gas, but so specifically the natural gas, and pretty much just blow these areas deep in under the ground level, blow them open to get to these pockets. So yes,
and you also have to realize these fossil fuels. The Earth naturally did this over millions of years, millions and millions of years, and they're literally trying to speed it up in a matter of 2 to 3. Yeah. So they are accelerating what the Earth naturally does in order to obtain these fossil fuels. This is not how our Earth was meant to work. It's not.
And there's also a reason.
I mean, in any way that you can say was meant. It's more like this is not how it has historically functioned. Humans are the only animal to be able to access these resources at this kind of rate.
Right. Yeah. And we, if I'm not mistaken, are the very first animals, because that's what we are. We're animals to adjust the planet to work for us and not work with the planet.
That we know of. We have absolutely no clue, because, even all evidence
because, big things come out of the sky and just fucking burn everything to the ground, so we don't fucking know.
We have no clue what the dinosaurs were capable of.
The Scientologists just may have been fucking right, you know what I mean? Like, fuck, we don't know.
Of course we know what the dinosaurs were capable of, because we lived alongside them.
Oh, yeah.
I forgot. Oh, and also Australia is imaginary. I don't know where Marrow is, but she's an Asheville.
Finland
doesn't need to remind everybody of that.
Have y'all heard this one, that Finland doesn't exist at all?
Yes, I've heard that one.
This theory?
And look, Mathfig's got some really compelling evidence too. We've got some YouTube videos. That's some scientific proof right there. Yep. We're gonna have to reconsider our positions, guys.
Yep.
But the reason that we are doing, or we're shifting more to things like fracking and tar sands, is because, well, first of all, there aren't exactly a shit ton of places in the continental U.S. for us to drill for actual oil or petroleum reserves. But I'm not saying we're running out of oil, but we're blowing through it at a fucking alarming
fucking rate.
Nowhere near that we thought that we would be, and it keeps getting worse because our population is, it's called exponential growth, and nearly every human being on the planet uses some form of fossil fuel at some point in their lives to sustain themselves.
We are very unique in the sense that we are one of the very few countries that popped up around suburbs and took in this quieter suburban life, which absolutely came hand in hand with the auto industry. It came hand in hand with the auto industry and moving out of the city and moving away from public transportation and moving away from apartment buildings and communal living became the standard of making it. You had a quiet life in the suburbs and life was simpler.
But you also had a life where you had big houses because you had land and places to expand.
Right.
Big houses, big families,
big
all of
lawns.
Everything, especially in America, everything is bigger here, and you need, more resources to make everything possible.
Right.
So, and one thing you were talking about earlier in terms of climate justice, another thing that we really need to take into consideration, and it's actually starting to become a problem now, more so in Europe, but soon here as well, is climate refugees. You have people that are in places on the planet that are just no longer sustainable at all. Especially one of the issues is that climate change affects different places on the planet at different rates. There are actually places, I think more than 60% of human populated areas on the planet have already surpassed the 1.5 degree hike of temperature.
I'm sorry, honey. Just when you guys touch this, I'd like to touch on what Hannibal of Carthage has stated about contagion rates in Europe from COVID-19. Not true. One of the hardest hit areas in Italy was actually a very rural place. Also, when you have an apartment building that has a central heat and air system that is shared, you have what's called damper effects, which what it allows it to pretty much do is you work on one HVAC system, but you can have different thermostats so that when one is done, it shuts it off. It's not if your neighbor's sick, you can get their sickness. No, that is not how it works. If that was the case, I literally lived in communal housing that housed close to 4,000 people my entire life. I would be sick all the time. This is not how modern urban living works. One of the hardest hit areas in Italy was a remote, very quiet, very quaint little town. Their entire town died.
Yeah,
it was something of a population like 400 people. This is not how apartment living works. Mind you, we didn't share AC. We shared heat. We shared a heat source. If that was the case, literally everyone would be sick all the time. COVID-19 also doesn't travel in the air particles that you think they do. It is not aerosol. It's moisture-based.
Yeah.
So whatever is coming, it's not going to come through your HEPA filter because most HEPA filters are actually rated to block a 2.5 ppm fucking microparticle, which is exactly what COVID-19 transfers on.
Plus, there's a reason that we have a 6 foot social distancing rule because
correct
our moisture particles can only travel a certain distance.
Contagion rates in Europe from COVID-19, then explain to me why we have a higher rate than any fucking European country out there. Explain to me why we are having higher death rates and higher contagion rates of any European country out there when we are largely a suburban and sprawled out country. Yes, Gainer, New York City would have been harder hit if the air supply thing was the case. Absolutely. You would have been seeing entire blocks of New York City projects dying, whole buildings dying, entire high rises dying. This is not how air transfer works. This is not how COVID works. So please, sit the fuck down. Stop peddling this whole ass bullshit and this misinformation and learn some fucking shit. Because it's shit like that is literally causing people to say, well, we're all going to get it anyway, so why the fuck not? Why not just do the herd immunity bullshit? All that is doing is feeding into that level of fucking insane bullshit. If that is how it worked, you would have had 3/4 of New York City dead.
Here's what I wanted to say, because I've been following this shit. Like, it hit my state first here in the U.S., right? Mm-hmm. Like, this is something that is completely unquestioned. Like, first case in the country was here. First set of cases, first deaths in the country were here. We got hit, like, in my household within the first couple of weeks of when they started actually locking down the country. Following the stories out of, like, Italy and Spain, Spain's massive problem was that they refused to acknowledge it because they didn't want to screw over the tourism season, which, of course, when you've got like everybody vacationing in Spain from all over Europe, and especially the big music festivals and shit, yeah, you're going to have outbreaks. Italy, it's because they have the largest elderly population in Europe, and on top of it, they also have multi-generational living. You have parents and grandparents living with kids quite often, you know, well into adulthood until marriage and such, and even then, it's fairly characteristic for people to have their parents move back in rather than putting them into assisted living facilities like we have here. So what you have are snot-nosed kids, you know, petri dishes. No offense to parents, they are.
No, my going to school, a walking petri dish.
And now you've got grandma sick off her ass. And that's basically what happened in a lot of these places.
Also, the fact of the European strain of COVID-19 has a triple the amount of viral load that the Asian strain had. The viral load, the strain that came into New York City was found to be the European strain of COVID-19, which mutated and tripled its viral load. The viral load is what's going to tell you it's going to fucking kill you. This is why we saw such high death rates in Europe, because the viral load was off the fucking chain. It was a different strain of the virus. So please kindly sit down, shut the fuck up, and stop peddling shit on this channel that's going to get this stream demonetized. Thank you.
They would like it, you know, the whole herd immunity thing is stupid. Yeah, my son has lung disease. Would you like me to go send him out and just see what happens? Yeah. Hope he gets immunity and doesn't die? Because fuck that.
Well, and on top of it, like,
we'll burn this world to the ground to keep my kids safe.
Word.
So no.
Y'all don't know what we're dealing with this virtual school shit. It's shit. But we would rather take the time to educate our kids ourselves with a base plan than send them out to die. Or send them out to kill other people.
Most of the kids in my son's school are already back. I've had 2 teachers now call to ask, oh, you know, think you could send Angel back? Because, you know, we've only got a couple kids left and it's just easier for me not to have to split up this time. Nope. Sorry.
No,
my
bitch.
Kid has lung disease.
Get your shit
you can
straight.
Suck a dick.
Oh, no, my kid's school system sent out a welcome back from fall break picture. They had kids sitting next to each other. They had, mind you, it was like one desk here, but it was still 2 kids to a desk. The teacher, nobody had a fucking mask on. Nobody.
No. And this was something Jen and I went through for like a month before school started, back and forth, just freaking out. Like, what are we going to do? Luckily, we're not idiots, but I live in Georgia. It is not fucking good here. I live not that fucking far from Atlanta, which was a huge problem, especially because the world's busiest airport is 40 minutes up the road.
Oh my god! Like if you literally die in the United States and you need to be transported, your fucking body's going through Atlanta Hartsfield. Like,
yeah. So it has not been great here, and yet for some reason, because our governor is a Trump dick sucker, you know, and decided to fuck off the mayor of Atlanta because she spoke out against Trump not wearing a mask when he came here. He decided to make it illegal, or he wrote an executive order in my state that made it illegal for counties and towns and cities to have mask mandates, which is fucking insane, like super nuts. But anyway, I'm sorry, I digress.
Yeah, we went off on a tangent. I'm sorry. Let's get back to these climate.
So apparently I did find the number up here, and it's I have to scroll back up past all of his bragging about his record on these things. It was 2.5 or 1.7 trillion over the next 10 years, leveraging additional private sector and state and local investments to total more than 5 trillion. So that's the amount of money that he wants to invest. And then you have a bunch of him bragging about his record. And then here we have the actual Biden plan. So he wants and establishes an enforcement mechanism to achieve the 2050 goal of total 100% clean energy, including a target no later than the end of his first term in 2025 to ensure that we get to the finish line.
Y'all see what I mean? You see where it's stacking here, right? Okay.
Makes historic investment in energy and climate research and innovation, and incentivizes the rapid deployment of clean energy innovations across the economy. Now, I am going to tout my state again for a second. Washington, actually, we just passed an initiative that within the next 10 years, I believe SeaTac has to completely go to renewable, like petroleum sources and such for all of the planes that fly in and out of there. So that's something that's actually really, really cool. They've also been working on like tightening up our emissions and such, so that it's going to be a lot freaking harder to continue to use a lot of the older cars with shitty emissions.
Can I just touch on what Hercule says here?
Sure.
Fossil fuel. He probably will. And coming from somebody who is from the political sector, it's needed. He will have fossil fuel execs. He will have oil and natural gas execs that will be working behind the scenes in his cabinet.
How about let's not make a fossil fuel, an ex-fossil fuel executive the fucking head of the
Well, he needs them. Because that's the only way, yeah. That's the only way he's going to transfer. He has to guarantee these people that they're still going to have some kind of job. The only way that he's going to be able to say, hey, I'm going to trade you green for fossil fuel is if he gives them a fucking job. It gets them on his side, and it gets the industry shifted.
And also, you look at some of the fossil fuel companies. A lot of them are actually doing the shift themselves. And as much as I hate big oil, having at least some sort of political connection, as Jen mentioned, helps them not only ease their mind about it, but be able to shift us over to alternative energies, as opposed to ExxonMobil that just rolled out a plan recently that is talking about the exponential amount of emissions they will be producing in the next.
Oh yeah, ExxonMobil's like, y'all remember the Exxon Valdez? Hold my fucking beer. Like,
oh my god, it is so bad. I understand that it's not like them like literally coming out and saying, hey, look, we're gonna produce all of these carbon emissions. It's about the amount that they plan on extracting and selling and stuff like that. But that leads to carbon emissions. But the thing is that pretty much every other big oil company is at least fronting like they're trying to do to work with Paris and the rest of the planet on cutting down on fossil fuels or on carbon emissions. And no, Exxon just decided, fuck it, we're going all in on this one. So that was kind of heartbreaking, to say the least.
Yeah.
But what I was saying about climate refugees earlier is that the way that the planet is tilted, there are certain parts of it that are, that the climate of the change in climate affects more, specifically in the southern hemisphere and those along the equator. So places right now, the worst hit are places in Africa. So they're already seeing climate refugees come out of Africa and into Europe, but there are also places in South America. A big part of these caravans that Trump keeps complaining about, some of them are climate refugees. They cannot live what they're living anymore because they're burning to the ground, or there's no water. You're talking about places that were already drought stricken because of where they were on the planet, but they're more so now because of the change in climate. So you have people that literally have nowhere to live, but they also have no means in which to change where they live because they're from third world countries that can't even get to the fucking next town. So they're packing up entire places, and this is a global issue. This is something that we all need to work on. We need, as the most powerful country on the planet, as being as rich and as big as we are, and we have a lot of land. We need to be able to take these people in. We are contributing to the reason that they are losing their home is, America, like I said, 25% of carbon emissions on this planet produced by fucking America. We are directly responsible for these people's lives being lost and their homes being lost. For him to say, no, fuck you, you got to stay out, that's not okay. It's not.
But it doesn't matter to him.
No, I know it
Whatever
doesn't.
puts the money in his pocket. That's what it is. Because if anyone's going to sit here and say he still ain't making money, he is. In his private ventures, he absolutely is.
Yeah.
And what he's doing now is he knows that he's not going to be seen anywhere near as one of the best presidents in this country. In fact, he's probably going to be seen as one of the worst. What he's doing now is he's securing his financial future because he knows he's probably not going to win this election.
Oh.
So he's kissing the ass of anyone that he fucking can to give him an opportunity after he leaves office. So he doesn't give a shit about who he's pushing out of the house. He doesn't give a shit about whose homes he's destroying. He doesn't give a shit about whose home is underwater. He doesn't give a shit about erosion. He's going to kiss the ass of the companies doing this in order to secure himself financially after his term is over. Because he's not going to stay in politics.
At least $421 million he's got owed in the next 4 years. So.
Mm-hmm. And he knows he doesn't have a career in politics after this.
No, he knows that. What's he going to do?
What's he going to do? What,
he
be
couldn't
the
even
Department
be a
of fucking
fucking
energy? No.
catcher. Yeah, right?
Fuck.
We're coming up on an hour and a half in, by the way, so we normally start wrapping up within the next 10 minutes or so, but we do have a year one legislative agenda that I wanted you guys both to get a chance to look at. Jen, because Jen is policy whiz, and Mama, because you're on the front line of this stuff. So do you guys want to go over kind of this little section right here?
Sure.
Okay, so here's where it starts to look like he has this big long preamble, and I read parts of this earlier, so like I know this is kind of mostly a preamble, just like this is why it's important.
Wordy. Joe's real fucking wordy, man, and it's not like I'm hiding shit wordy. It's like Grandpa who doesn't shut the fuck up wordy. It's just like, oh my god, get to the fucking point. You fucked a hooker in Bangkok. Okay, we get it. Like, all right, done.
But I specifically.
So, by the way, sorry if you guys are hearing
creaking.
Sorry if you guys are hearing creaking, by the way, or like what sounds like creaking. The babies are behind me, and we just installed them in a new cage because they got out of their old one, and we put a wheel in it. And rats will eat literally anything, so we can't exactly grease the wheel, but you guys are going to hear them run on it because the babies are very excited about the fact that they have a wheel.
It out at this point. I'm just like, oh, okay, it's the babies. Cool.
So they won't be in here for too much longer. We'll have to separate the sexes at some point, and once they get large enough, we'll move them out into the living room so that like we're more worried about the fact that they're like mouse sized, so we don't want our cat going after her.
Yeah.
But apologies if you guys have been hearing about it. If you guys have been hearing it this whole time, because
Robbie says
fucking Math Pig, yo.
Math Pig,
I love this motherfucker.
I'm not putting that on the screen.
This is why I love that motherfucker, man. If any of y'all ever like wonder like, I wonder if Math Pig and Jen would get along. Yes.
Yeah.
Because of shit like this. We have the same fucking sense of humor.
To accelerate progress, Biden would make the largest ever investment in clean energy research and innovation after World War II. Public investment in research and collaboration between universities and private sector spurred American innovation, leading to rapid... This is the explanation shit that I was talking about. The Biden plan will double down on this approach to create industries of the future by investing $400 billion over 10 years. That's twice the investment of the Apollo program, which put a man on the moon in today's dollars. This investment will enable us to develop new technological breakthroughs that will create jobs and vastly reduce emissions. So here's where we start to get into the nitty gritty of this. These are technologies that they want to talk about. Lithium, grid scale storage at 1/10 the cost of lithium ion batteries.
Okay.
Small modular nuclear reactors at half the construction cost of today's reactors.
Good.
Actually, Mama and I met on a stream about nuclear energy and why nuclear energy is so essential and important. And we actually talked a little bit about it, if I recall correctly, with Maddie as well.
You know, everyone here is nuclear energy, and they're like, oh my God, Chernobyl.
Yeah. People are so scared of it. Sometime I'll do a video on that as well, explaining why we don't have to worry about that shit. And yes,
because I want to like literally like hit people with that.
I know the feeling. Trust me.
I want to like fucking hit people with it.
Zero net energy buildings at zero net cost. Using renewables to produce carbon-free hydrogen at the same cost as that from shale gas.
Now, shale gas is what we were talking about with fracking. Where do you think you get shale gas? Where do you think you get natural gas from? You frack the shale. What the shale is the plate that the mountains, that the Appalachian Mountains sit on. This is where your natural gas pockets lie. When they frack, they're fracking the actual shale. This is where your fracking comes into play.
Decarbonizing industrial heat needed to make steel, concrete, and chemicals, and reimagining carbon neutral construction materials. So this one reimagining carbon neutral construction materials sounds more like we hope that there's something there. But the ones so far, apart from that, look like we've got technology that we're exploring that we just need to develop more. And am I about right there, Mama, as far as that stuff goes?
Yes and no. Yeah, the way they're phrasing it, but there are actually a lot of things in progress, not as far along as we would like them to be. I was specifically waiting for carbon capture, and I love how it's last though. That is the area that we need to put a lot more resources and effort and research into. And it was something that, while there has been a lot of process or progress in the past, since Trump has been in office, only because, regardless of the funding that's been cut from my sector, we're scientists, so we're going to try to figure out anyway. Plus, we have private funding as well. But carbon capture is very, very essential.
Yes.
It's something that we're developing very well, and I did research on Meta Organics framework carbon capture systems, and it was incredibly interesting on both small scale for industrial size and a larger scale overall. But I just wish that this was something he would put up
That was
front
talked
and
about
say,
more, yeah.
yeah. And then to list it absolutely last is a little upsetting. That's something we really need to get into, is definitely more on the carbon capture front. We need to, as much as we need to put into alternative energies and stuff like that, super important. It is also important to fix the shit that we're creating right now.
That we're creating now. Because this is when we have to fix it, is fucking now.
So this one is one that's really important. Decarbonizing the food and agriculture sector and leveraging agriculture to remove carbon dioxide from the air and store it in the ground. From what I've read, the agriculture sector is something like a third of carbon emissions currently.
Yes. Now, I have a question about that maybe Momma Atheist can answer for me. Like I said, I think it was called I forgot the name of it, when that lake in Africa blew up due to improper dumping and a carbon dioxide bubble that was under the lake that exploded and killed the village. Do we have any fear of this happening here if we start storing our carbon dioxide underground? Do we have any worry of it traveling into the water supply or getting trapped within a lake, a river, and then exploding and killing people?
I mean, we already do carbon sinks. It's not something that's new or anything, and there's always a possibility for something like that. But much like the nuclear energy, what we've advanced on that front, it's the same thing that we know.
So there are restrictions
There's
in place
always,
so that it won't.
Yeah, there. Well, honestly, in terms of, I don't know what Trump has done to get rid of that, but there are restrictions and are one of the leaders in the world in terms of how strict we are on our carbon sinks.
Hannibal of Carthage. I heard there's also radioactive ores in parts of Japan.
That is true.
So, do you know why? Because the Fukushima Daiichi power plant was under severe need of reconstruction. And when the tsunami hit the water wall that needed to be fixed and repaired, it broke through it and therefore literally washed radioactive waste all over the land. This wasn't about nuclear energy. This wasn't about the ills of nuclear energy. It was about the ills of capitalism and not taking care of their infrastructure. This is why we have radioactive wars, and this is why we have radioactive water in Japan, because the private company that was in charge of the Fukushima Daiichi power plant refused to fix and alter their seawall. This isn't an ill of nuclear power. This isn't an ill of nuclear energy. This is an ill of capitalism.
Yeah, it is. And that's...
Well, and on top of it, I'm going to add that as far as rats go, I own rats. Rats are extremely prone to cancer. If there were radioactive rats, they would be dead. Just saying.
I see this, but we have this, but we have that. And even if it's meant in the context of something good, you need to take an account of the audience that we're fighting against for this, to where people who are like nuclear power is bad, this is exactly what they think of. They think of mutations, they think of Chernobyl, and they think of world-ending fucking bombs. So when you turn around and say something like, yeah, but I hear that there's radioactive boars running around, one, you're hitting probably the poor areas of the country where boars actually live and kill and destroy things, and the thought of a radioactive fucking boar is absolutely terrifying.
The thought of any boar, honestly, is terrifying.
Boars will make that shit radioactive, though.
I need to correct myself on something. Titan pointed out, and I'm sorry, I was wrong. U.S. isn't 25%. It's actually 26%, which is China. The U.S. is 16%. I am sorry, I got that number wrong.
Hamabo, you're sitting here saying I'm arguing that seawalls aren't big enough. That's literally, you're injecting fear into the nuclear energy program. Fukushima Daiichi was incredibly promising until it got, its capitalist fucking claws into it. It was increasingly promising. But when you say things like, but they didn't do this, but they didn't do that, what I'm trying to fucking sit here and tell you is that you are sitting here feeding into a fear tactic that is used to stick to the very same examples and the very same practices that we are currently killing our planet with. So what I'm referencing and what I'm suggesting is changing your narrative to something more positive and more fact-based, rather than fear tactic and significant and small.
Okay, apparently, according to Comrade, Hamable wasn't fear-mongering, was agreeing with you about capitalism.
Right, and I get that. But what I'm saying is, watch the narrative. Instead of turning around and saying, but now they have this, and now they don't build seawalls. Hergles, and this is what I'm saying, you have to turn around and say, well, if you look at what coal and fossil fuel and fracking and drilling for oil is doing to our country and is doing to our planet, yes, while nuclear seems really fucking scary, this is the alternative, and this is what we don't have to do, and this is how we save money for it. And if we can turn around and treat nuclear energy as an actual utility, then we wouldn't have to worry about capitalism and their own regulations on seawalls and the wildlife around it. That is how you change the narrative. When you turn around and start putting into fear tactics and saying, well, they don't do this and they don't do that, even if you sit in there and you're trying to argue the ills of capitalism, what you are actively doing is arguing the ills of nuclear power to those who may not be as educated on it.
And the problem is that when you push misinformation of something of this import, it has devastating effects. It really does. The fact of the matter is, and this is something that that my 16-year-old son, has brought up to me many times, is that he doesn't understand why climate change is even a question, let alone a political topic in this country. Because the rest of the world accepts it for a fact and move forward with it. We try to fix what we started instead of denying it and ignoring it. And my question to anybody out there that says that I'm getting paid for, to push my climate
the
agenda.
lib agenda.
Okay,
well, and here's the thing.
Yes, I am being paid. I make money off of my job. I work and I have to feed my child, but I don't make dick. I'm a scientist, and so I don't understand who these people are that are funding this effort
they think
make the world a cleaner place. Oh no.
They think everyone makes the same amount of money as a rocket scientist working on the next fucking rover mission. This is what they think.
I was a rocket scientist. I didn't make shit.
I know. I was gonna say, you're a fucking rocket scientist, literally.
Well, and again, we had Maddie on who talked about this very issue as well. And Maddie even talked about the majority of the problems currently facing nuclear in the U.S. are not actually technological. They're entirely fear-based, and they're entirely that politicians do not want to take the risk of backing nuclear. They don't want nuclear plants in their backyard, even though nuclear could, it is one of the cleanest source of energy that we currently have. We can use, from what Maddie had said and from what you had said, Mama, when we were talking about it on your stream, we can use almost all of the byproducts over and over and over, reducing and reducing and reducing until we're basically left with benign stuff that can then just be stored.
Right.
Yeah. Because again, we have technologies that we've been working on since 1986 that have taken us far away from Chernobyl and 3 Mile Island. Yeah, and there was the meltdown from it was a year ago to a couple of years ago, but not, this is places that do not have the kind of advanced science that we have. We know what we're doing, but this is an issue in Europe as well, especially because of Europe's proximity to Russia. And the fact of the matter is that had they not cleaned up Chernobyl as quickly as they had, they would have killed more than half of all of Europe.
Like 500,000 people. Yeah, half a million people would have been dead within the first year.
So for those of you who've been watching, I have been scrolling through his plan as well since we haven't been able to talk about all of it. We're in the last 10 minutes of the show for rewatchability, so we need to kind of wrap up. If you guys had a message that each of you could give to folks.
Real quick, I wanted to touch on something quick. Biden is proposing a high-speed rail system.
Do you want me to pull that up, or do you think
I can cover it quickly. Back in 2011, Obama had a plan for a high-speed rail system. It would consist of a bunch of fucking trains and hubs, and the main lines would run, I want to say, between 100 and 200 miles an hour. The more remote areas would have trains that would run around 90 miles an hour to make sure of wildlife, to make sure of, preserves and stuff like that. This is now back on the table with Biden. And from what I'm seeing, to where he wants to regulate the airline industry a bit, because the airline industry is a massive contributor to climate issues. What do you think on that, Momma Atheist? Do you think that would help curb some of our climate and carbon emissions issues by putting in high-speed rail across the country? Granted, it would take 5 or 6 years. But do you think that would be a significant amount to cut down on cars and to cut down on aviation?
I think in the long run, there's a possibility that it would, but I think it's such an undertaking for people to change that sort of lifestyle that it's almost a toss-up, because people are just used to getting on planes and jumping across the country, or just getting in the cars. And, yeah. So, I couldn't tell you, but it could, I think, in terms of rolling it out, at least on a small scale and trying it, why not? What's it going to hurt? We do need to cut down on our flights. And no, we don't want to get rid of all planes. We don't want to get rid of all cows.
I'm not going to sit on a fucking train for 12 hours either and put my ass on a fucking plane. But when it comes down to saying going to see Manda, because we're not that far from each other, I would much prefer to jump on a train that took me the same amount of time to drive, that I can put some fucking headphones in on and just relax on my way there.
And that's what Europe does.
I was just gonna ask that. Is there any kind of considerable difference that you see that science has seen in carbon emissions between Europe and the United States, to where they do have a very robust public transportation rapid train system between countries?
From the little I know about it, it does make a big difference because of the fact that so many people use it. It's so widely available. People will hop on and off. A lot less people own personal vehicles. There's a lot less flights because Europe is much like the continental U.S.
Let me tell you, I jumped a train from northern England. We had to get up to the Lake District, but it was northern England to Switzerland. It was Switzerland, Norway, and Sweden were the 3 options. It was cheap as fuck. It was so stupidly fucking cheap. It was way cheaper than a flight. And then you got this banger sleeper car with this super fucking comfy bed and shit. I'm like, y'all, I feel like I'm back in the 1800s and I'm some fucking rich ass fucking steel bitch sitting up on this motherfucking train. Give me my hat and my cigarette holder, because I'm just living my best fucking life right now.
Yeah, and they don't have that on planes, so yeah,
no,
that's true. No. But no, it would. There is a difference, but there's a lot of things that Europe does so much better than us. And big reason that they do is because they accept this for what it is. I mean, Angela Merkel is a molecular physicist, I think.
Yes.
We should have people. I'm not saying the president has to be a scientist, but we should have more people in power that know what they're talking about
around him, that are yo, dude.
Yeah. And any president, not just Trump.
Hannibal of Carthage, it was really, really a possibility when Obama was in office. If you go onto Obama's presidency website, is actually still up for published, and there was an entire high-speed rail plan laid out. which is what I think Joe Biden is actually going to wind up piggybacking on. The issue is that you got Republican House control. And when it came down to passing what we needed to expand on the Amtrak infrastructure, to allow certain Republican states that we needed the land to build tracks for, they wouldn't budge.
Sarcastic. I'm not an infectious disease specialist. However, what I will say is that currently, I mean, even when there's a vaccine, we have seen that we now have multiple confirmed cases of people getting it twice. So the vaccine, we don't even know is going to give us long-term protection.
The vaccine trials were actually just halted due to unknown illness.
Yeah, and safety concerns.
Yes.
For one of the companies.
No, but other companies have pulled their vaccine trials because of that.
But coming back to that, the answer is
not
honestly
because they had an illness, but because of that thing. Yeah.
And I'm going to say this because it's mostly the right doing this. There are people on the left that are idiots too. We've got our freaking New Agers and all the other shit. We've got our problems. But the people who are outright calling it a hoax are the people on the right mostly. So I'm going to talk to them for a half a minute. If the people on the right keep putting out conspiracy theories about the freaking masks being a pagan initiation ritual and shit like that, which, by the way, for those of you who haven't seen it, I covered that here on my channel. There's a video. If you go check out the Christians Are Weird playlist, it's on there. It's also in the Pissed Off Polytheist playlist. If that shit keeps going on and Trump keeps backing them, and because Trump's going to remain a figurehead, same as Obama, like when he gets out of office, like he is now our problem for, decades. And there are people who worship him like a god. And as long as he continues to do this stupid shit, and as long as other Republicans toe the line, even if we get a Biden presidency, we've got national policy that's going to be better. There's still a lot of states' rights. And unless the Biden administration goes totalitarian-ish with the CDC, we're going to be looking at a long haul with COVID potentially mutating and coming back over and over and over again. Now it's been unleashed on the populace because
it already
people will refuse to do the things they need to do in order to not get sick. There are people, even in my state, where mask mandates are actually at something like 87% compliance, that are still being dumb. And as long as people are doing that, we're in it for the long haul. I want to give a message of hope, but I can't with this. I'm watching people die. I know people who have died. I know people who have lost family members. I nearly died. My husband ended up in the hospital. He nearly died.
I've lost I've lost 7 fucking people.
Yeah, and my family's
lost 6 months.
My extended family has lost people.
Got sick, Allie, and that was near the beginning of this thing. And I talked to you that night. I was scared you were. I can't imagine. I just can't. I'm sorry. And no, it's Trump.
He had a fever of over 104. At that point, Amanda. For the record, I'm going to be full disclosure on this. Amanda let me call her and talk to her for almost 3 freaking hours because I was so broken with my husband because we could not get the hospital to hold him long enough to bring his temperature down. We were sitting here going, what is enough for him to be held? Because under normal circumstances, fever of 104, fever of 105, which he had 105.5 at one point, that can start killing your brain cells because of overheating. And the pandemic was such that they didn't have enough rooms to be able to hold him with those temperatures. And we ended up having to alternate 2 different NSAIDs to keep his temperature down. You guys want to talk about how scary this shit is? I am still dealing with the lasting effects. I have lost hair. I have chronic body pain. My lungs have lost capacity. I lost freaking muscle mass from being stuck in bed. This shit screws your entire body up royally. And my husband, he had to use his freaking CPAP like a ventilator. You want to talk about how do we get through this as fast as possible? Wear your goddamn mask, stop bitching about it, and push everyone you know through as much social pressure as humanly possible to do the same. Debunk this stupid information with better shit, because we're in this for the long haul as long as people keep trying to pretend that this is something that it's not.
Mm-hmm.
Trump does not give a fuck about you. No. He doesn't care about the illness. Look what he got.
Thank you, Akeda. How do you
care on the planet, okay? And he, for the most part, even though he does stupid shit, he's insulated. He doesn't give a fuck what happens to any single one of us. Okay? And the misinformation, you want to talk about how fucked up it is, okay? I take care of my parents. I moved to Georgia to take care of my elderly parents who are both ill. My mother was a nurse, okay? So a medical professional. And when they wanted to open up school, they wanted to give us the option at first because they ended up not opening up physically, but they did want to give us the option at first either do in school or at home. And my mother got pissed at me because I didn't want to send my kid with lung disease into school because that's what Fox News told her needed to be done. A medical professional. So this misinformation is not only dangerous, but it's not stupid people that are being affected by it. It's everybody because it's saturating everywhere.
Well, and I'm going to say, we were trying to conclude with climate change because unfortunately, because of COVID, because of the drama that happens on these stupid things, because of the fly in Mike Pence's hair, so many things are distracting us from real policy discussions. Like we ended up having to, when we were talking about the insanity that's been going on with justice in America, gloss over mass hysterectomies because we were talking about BLM police violence. Mm-hmm. There is so much that's going on that's barely being covered. That's part of the reason why I got so excited that you wanted to come on tonight, because climate change is not something that is talked about near enough. Climate change policy needs to be an essential component of any presidential campaign, and it's not with Trump, and it is with Biden. And I'm not necessarily saying, hey, Biden's my favorite fucking candidate on the planet. He's not. I voted for Sanders. Everybody here knows this. I would have voted for Warren if Sanders hadn't made it through. She was my second freaking choice. But Biden's who we're stuck with, and he's a fuck of a lot better than Trump because at least he even has a plan, and he's not just sucking the dick of big oil.
Look, COVID is
I'm sure he's sucking a testicle of big oil, but it's not the whole dick.
He is a politician. COVID is
he might be licking the testicle right
now, but in terms of what is literally the most important thing our species has ever faced, period. And I know you might think that I'm biased because I'm a climate scientist, but I just think I know more because I'm a climate scientist. I know what is actually happening. I see the animals dying off. I see the refugees. I see the parts of the planet. You can see pictures from places in sub-Saharan Africa from just even 10 years ago that are vastly different. Go download Google Earth, okay? Mm-hmm. And it will show you go over from 10, 20 years ago and just have it slowly time lapse, and you will see big swaths of the planet getting brown.
I live next to the mountains. Brown. You can physically I live next to the mountains. You can physically see how much less snowcap there is up there.
Here's a big shocker. I want y'all to go on Google Earth and go look at the Great Barrier Reef.
50%.
It's bleached. It's white. There's no color.
50% of it, and the only reason the stuff in the south is cooler, so it isn't bleaching as quickly, right. But it is still bleaching, and this is bleaching. And biggest and most important coral reefs are another.
Coral reefs are a massive food source, life source, base their source of our oceans.
Enormous ecosystem. Hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of species live in coral reefs. Only that,
what we're facing right now,
our coastlines. It's just
what we're facing right now. The Great Barrier Reef will completely bleach out in our lifetime. Completely.
If one of them if one of the mods could do me a favor and go on Nervardia's channel, we did a video about that. If you could throw it in the chat, that would be great. There's a lot of audio issues because there was something wrong with it. Was one of the OBS updates, but if you get a chance,
Nervardia is another good friend of the channel, by the way, another excellent science communicator. If you guys haven't checked her out, we did do an interview here on Xenia Bridge with her, talking about, if I recall correctly, we talked a little bit about COVID. We talked a lot about a lot of different things. She's
good in biology and chemistry.
She's good. She's good everywhere.
Yeah. I do her script editing. She and I have been good friends for quite some time. She's been another excellent friend of the channel. So we are at the last two questions that we always ask. We didn't actually get a chance to ask you the opening question, which is, what does allyship mean to you? So I will let you answer that. And then since you're an atheist guest, I get to ask the closing question first.
I think we all need to be able to work together and communicate. None of us are just one thing. We all just as a species in general, we share so much with each other, whether it be polytheism and atheism, Christianity, whether it be LGBT community, any of that. We need to be able to work together. And I think, that kind of goes along the lines of working as a globe to fight climate change. But we are a social species, and there is no other way to advance scientifically or as a society if not together. So
we're stronger together.
Yes. Sorry if that was a stupid answer, but
no, it's like that's exactly like what the fuck we say every time we fucking end this show. Like,
okay.
So what do you think that pagans can do to be better allies to atheists?
Honestly, I think it kind of needs to be the other way around right now. I think too many atheists.
Well, fuck it, then
you're
just gonna go answer my question. Okay.
Go ahead, Jen.
I'm sure that there's things that pagans can do as well, but
thank you, Maddie.
I think that atheists are just too closed-minded about, everybody has different beliefs, and we just need to understand that their beliefs are personal, and we need to respect each other for who we are as individuals. And there definitely needs to be communication there.
I talk to both of you guys regularly. Can I ask the two ladies in the room how many times I've actually tried to convert you?
0.
Never.
I mean, we joke about it, but
like, I mean, it was like 4 times this morning, but I mean, since like this afternoon. Never.
Since noon. No, I'm sorry. I just got tapped by a cat to pet her.
You were very open to me when I have questions about it, but no, you've never tried to fucking convert me. Christians, on the other hand, constantly trying to change my mind.
And what's something to mention is that if we all don't start working together on the shit that we talked about tonight, we're not going to have an opportunity to sit here and argue with each other about each other's beliefs.
Mm-hmm. No. Climate change is not a belief. It's whether or not it's not even whether or not you accept the science. The science is going to accept you for you by eradicating you if you don't do something about it.
Trust, the earth will stand. The earth will kill us before we kill it.
No.
And if we damage it enough, it will kill us and heal itself.
Yeah, and when I say it's hyperbole to say the world's going to end. Obviously, like I said, the planet will stand.
No, but our species will.
As we know it, no. None of it. And we, unfortunately, we are a very strong species. We can live anywhere. And for that reason, we will be one of the last to go. But we will be taking everybody out.
We need these other species to survive.
Yeah. There's a whole thing on food I could talk about, but another part, brain. I don't know if anybody knows who Brain Bug is.
I love Brain Bug.
Brain Bug was in our chat earlier. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think he had to go be with his son, but him and I are doing collaborations. We were supposed to do before I got sick from my surgery, so it'll be coming out soon about food sustainability and that kind of issue.
Oh,
so.
I like that.
And we'll be eating bugs too. So.
Well, that sounds like stuff that's coming up that you want to announce. By the way, again, link is in the description below to Momma's Atheist channel. Her channel's a bit bigger than mine now, but I still think it's criminally undersubbed. 1,600 subs is still a small channel, dang it, and we need to grow her. Pig. And I know there's probably a number of people in my audience, especially on the pagan side of my audience, who probably have not seen your stuff. If you enjoy science communication and talking about climate change, or even just goofing off and being nerdy, Momma Atheist channel is a lot of fun.
Seriously.
I don't tend to catch stuff live all that often, but I do tend to catch things a lot on the playback, and I'm proud to say that I've been subscribed to her channel since she launched it.
Oh, thank you, Allie.
I think it was very shortly after you launched it, I subbed.
Yeah, because we met after. So.
After, and I was like, oh, bloop.
You and I met right about the time that you were talking about launching a channel. You were like, people are convincing me to do it, but I don't want to. I just like being a guest. And I'm like, but you're awesome.
You need to do the
you were definitely one of the people that helped. And I'm glad that I did, because, I get to do more because I have my own channel. So I appreciate that. And I get to do, stuff like I do Dark Matter's Twitch streams and stuff like that. And I do Critical Cripples question show, and I'm on other people's channels, honestly, more than my own. But the science stuff, like I said, the little videos that I do, I do 3 different types of videos on my channel. Thank you, Jen. I do a TV time one, which is just, which I haven't done in a little while, but because of my surgeries and stuff, I just have a friend come on and we chat about a TV show. Just shoot the shit. It's fun. I have a live stream every Sunday called Living Critically, where I bring on someone from the community, and it would also include the pagan community. It's not just
it's not more just atheist exclusive. Yeah.
No, not at all. Where we talk about just issues in general. Like, well, I had Robert Reed on one time. We talked about how much we don't like living in the South. No offense to anybody who lives in the South. I'm not from here. He's a big ex-NFL black man. Like, you know, obviously he has his reasons.
Robert is fucking amazing, y'all, too. Go follow him on Twitter. He's fucking incredible.
He's great. This weekend I have Dr. Josh from Digital Hammurabi on for the 3rd time. He's one of my closest friends that I've met in the community. We're talking about
Dr. Josh is amazing, people. We need to get him on here one of these days.
Yeah, I love Josh.
Josh man, awesome in the world. We're talking about, I can't remember the exact name, but it's something. It was a false prophecy. I also talked about, he wrote a book. That was the last stream we did together, and we talked about the one before that was Old Testament law. And then I also do a thing called Secular Sunday Service, which is new, which is I bring on a panel. Our first one we talked about just why we joined the community. I did that with Aaron Rod, Dark Matter, Holy Kool-Aid, Godless Engineer, Robert Reed, and Aaron Lewis. And then the last one I did was about Christianity and politics, with, again, Dark Matter, because he's kind of my co-host on the show. Hammett Mehta, the Friendly Atheist, Jake from Hannah and Jake, and Chris Shelton. And the next one we'll be doing, GE will be my co-host for that. We're talking about the evolution, arguing with people that are anti-evolutionists. So sorry that I'm babbling about this.
GE has so much fun arguing with them, too. He's so much fun doing that.
Yeah. Jen, what have you got coming up?
I have my first patron topic video coming up on Thursday.
That's exciting.
I'm going to be diving into different relationships and stigmas and what they are. The 3 I'll be covering are obviously monogamy, polyamory, and flexamory, and what they mean, and what to do and what not to do, and what to assume and what not to assume, and just kind of deconstructing a lot of the myths behind different forms of relationships. This is something that quite a few of my patrons have asked me to cover. So this one's going to be a little more educational than that last one.
Do you have a guest coming up on Friday?
Not this Friday, but the Friday after that. I will be interviewing a friend of mine, Buddy Mathis, who is a hip-hop music and scene writer who rejected the label of atheism because he, as a black man, felt that the community did not fit him, and the community was actually very harshly against his interest in what he wanted to be an activist for. So, thank you, Maddie.
So, on this channel, we've got some interesting announcements. Staring angrily at my server, I'm still bitter, and Jen is also probably glowering in the general direction of folks who took her joke seriously.
I'm literal.
You're going to have to ask questions. You're going to have to do something. You're going to be there.
Fucking ornament now.
So, on Thursday, I'm going to do my best to get a video out. I've been feeling ill all day. For those of you who are in my Discord, you probably saw that I've been dealing with migraines, and I think I'm coming down with a cold. But if I can get myself between that and fillings tomorrow to get recording and editing done, sorry, patrons, if me getting my video out is a little bit late this week. You might get it on Wednesday if I can get stuff done tomorrow. I'm trying to put out a video on magic this week in the Hellenistic world, what it actually looked like, what the Greek magical papyri were and who wrote them, and how it's actually really different than modern occultism, and how a lot of my own sort of assumptions about it were upended during my research. So I'll be talking about the different kind of magic. As per usual, it was a way bigger topic than I expected. So six-page freaking thing later, and I'm like, well, I'm going to have to make 5 more videos because there's way too many different kinds of magic and I can't cover them all here. So if y'all want to know more about that, I will be putting that out probably on Thursday. Hopefully, if I won't, then y'all will get a notification in my Discord that it'll be coming out later. But Jen and I have the Angry Platonism wine stream on Saturday. I'm thinking, do you want to do it at about the same time we usually do, Jen? So
Sure.
7:30, 10:30.
I'm getting
EST?
exactly what I promised. I'm going to sit in that bed with no pants on, drinking while Allie screams about Platonism. That's what I was paid. That's what we were paid to do. This is what I'm paid to be an ornament, and that's what I will do.
So Jen is going to be stuck while I get myself a bottle of wine and rant and rave. I'm going to be referencing
occasionally from the background. It may not make sense if I'm drinking what I'm screaming about, but you'll occasionally hear some shit.
I will be going out and putting up pictures of the wine that I'll be drinking later on this week in the Discord server. So if those of you that are not a part of it, a link is in the description below. It's an allyship space.
Server, bitches. It's fun.
Yep, it's an allyship space. Atheists and pagans are equally welcome. And I highly encourage you guys to check it out. And last bit is next Monday, we are going to be having Celery on of Celery's Garden to talk about being a minority within a minority religion, how difficult it is to be a kinetic within the pagan sphere as like such a small minority, and in the broader context, you know, the experience of atheists and pagans of being minorities within the religious sphere overall. So that's what we're going to be doing on my channel this week. You guys are awesome.
Wolf,
thank you guys so much for hanging out.
Wolf is like all the fuck.
I just might have missed it. I might have missed it. I literally was about to say, you know, if you, in terms of people I really connect to that are pagan, aside from Allie, like Wolf on Twitter, I didn't even know he was here. I'm sorry, but yeah.
No, he literally just showed up like in the last 3 minutes. I love you, Wolf, but like Wolf is the literal fashionably late. Like he shows up for the Last Dance, gives off a fucking amazing Last Dance performance, and then fucking leaves. Like that's Wolf.
It's okay. I didn't say anything.
He shows up for the Last Dance, fucking kills that shit, and the party's over. Like,
hey, I will give him credit though. He was early as hell for his interview. Like he showed up before you did.
I know.
By the way, for those of you who don't know that much about Wolf the Red, first off, he's boss on Twitter. Go follow him. He's hilarious and the best pagan dad you'll ever see in your life, and the best dad, honestly, you'll ever see in your life.
Oh my god! Like,
second, he did an interview
Wolf
over on
is
this
my
channel.
pagan dad, and I'm a fucking atheist, and he's my pagan dad. I'm like, I need a pagan dad right now. Help.
Wolf has also given me some of the best talks, like pep talks on earth on days that I've had bad days. Like he is one of the best friends you'll ever have. He also gave an amazing interview over on this channel, even though we got distracted by the chat. So again, go check out the Xenia Bridge playlist. You'll see it there. But for tonight, we are 15 minutes over our usual time. However, this was a big topic, so it's totally understandable that we went over. We tend to go over when we have friends on, so it's absolutely nobody's fault. It's just, it's a big topic, and we were talking about something that's super important. So I hope that this has helped you guys with making voting decisions if you hadn't already decided to, you know, on who you were going to vote for, and also gave you a few things to think about what's going on within your states.
Please don't vote the Lollipop Guild back into office. Please don't vote the Lollipop Guild back into office. Thank you.
Oh, and one last thing. My partner and boyfriend and producer Matt Big is, thank you.
Are you happy now, Matt Pig? She said something. Are you fucking happy?
Go check out his channel. I'm on it all the time, so
No, Matt Pig's got some funny shit, man. We gotta work out time issues.
He does a great open mic every week.
I know, but
that
it's
brings
like always
everybody
when my kid has to do
welcome
homework.
I know. And you have so much fun. It was so much fun when you came on too. But definitely check out another thing about allyship and just having that lines of communication open. It's very important. So Math Pick, check him out. Thank you. Sorry, how to do that.
All right, so thank you guys again so much for joining us. Thank you again, Mama, for coming on, especially so last minute. I'm super grateful to have you on, and it was a great conversation. You've been an amazing friend and ally in the community, and you were a fantastic guest. So thank you again so much for hanging out with us.
Thank you for having me. Anytime.
And remember, guys, we're stronger together.